Hello, guten Tag, and welcome to another lighting tutorial. In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to use a simple 3-point lighting setup for interviews or YouTube videos, talking heads, whatever you want to do. This technique will help you a lot in your filmmaking career. And this video is sponsored by ZHIYUN because we're going to use all their lights on this setup because they're amazing for an interview talking head setup like this. We're going to use the brand new Molus G300 as well as the 5-ray M20C. So let's dive right in because we have a lot of stuff to cover. We're going to start with a very simple setup that is my go-to for 90% of all my generic interview setups. And then we're going to move forward to a more specialized lighting setup that is particularly interesting for beauty content, especially if you have a female talent. So let's start with our very first lighting setup. Here we go. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to place our subject in our room, and we just found a nice place for her to sit in that has nice compositions and framing. And when we're going to place our subject, we're going to have two ways to actually go about this. Number one is the traditional interview setup where she's talking to a person, somebody's that interviewing her, so she's never going to look directly into the camera and she's slightly looking off screen. That means we're going to place our camera at around a 45-degree angle towards her. And I will be going a little bit more in detail about this a little later. The second version we could do is when we have a direct tutorial, let's say a YouTube video, then she is going to look directly into the camera and we're going to have our camera more center focused. For this video tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate the way that we would be filming a traditional interview setup. So we're going to place our camera on her left side. And why are we going to place the camera on her left side? Because, and this is the first thing that we need to learn when we're going to set up our 3-point lighting, is that we have light motivation. That means that we're going to see a window on our camera left in the background, and there is light coming in. So we want to place the camera on the opposite side of that light source, because therefore we do get a bit more contrast, and this is called filming shadow side, because we're going to film into the dark side of her face. Because when we're going to bring in our main light later, then we're going to light the other side of the face, therefore creating more depth and a little bit of a silhouette. Speaking of our main light, let's start bringing in our very first light. And we refer to this as our key light, meaning this is our main light that is going to light our subject. And as I've already said, we're going to place this on our camera left in around a 45-degree angle. And that will mimic the sunlight coming in because we want our setup to look as natural as possible. And like I said, we can see that there's a window on our camera left. So we want to imitate our key light to be the sunlight coming in through the window. And as I've already mentioned in the beginning, for our key light, we're going to use the ZHIYUN Molus G300. And this is a 300 watt CUB light. And it's amazing because it's very small and tiny and we can put it in all places. It's also very easy to transport. So for an interview setup like this, where you need multiple lights, this is a very good tool to have in your bag. To get a really nice and soft key light, because it's way more flattering for our subject, we're going to use a softbox. And the softbox we're going to use today is from ZHIYUN as well, and it's a rectangular softbox at 60 to 90 centimeters. The bigger the softbox, the bigger our light source will be, and therefore the softer and more flattering our light source will be in the end. Before we bring in our own lights, we need to expose our camera for the light situation that we can't control. What do I mean by this? We have the light coming in from the window and we can't really adjust this anyway. So this is the scene that we have to work with. So the first thing we do is we're going to adjust the camera settings on our camera to match the background. And now the background is exposed very well to our liking, but now our subject is a little bit on the dark side, and this is where our key light comes in. So we're going to place our key light, like I already said, on around a 45-degree angle towards our talent, and then we're going to turn it on. And as you can see here, it's way too bright, so we need to lower the intensity by a lot. It's currently set to 32%, and that demonstrates how strong this light is. It's quite dark right now because the sun is already setting, but if you wanted to use this light outdoors, it goes all the way up to a peak of 500 watts, which is plenty to battle the sun on a bright day when it's coming in, or on a sunset day when you're filming outside. So let us lower the light to where we like it, because we just want to have it subtle and natural looking. Right around here is fine, and this gives us a really nice and soft light on our camera left. And like I already mentioned, we're gonna shoot shadow side, meaning we're going to shoot into the darker parts of her face and therefore create contrast and create depth in the overall image. So this is the first point of our lighting, but as we can see in our example, she's not really separating herself from the background very well. So we can bring in another light, and this one is called hair light because we're going to point it directly at her hair. And for this, we're going to use another ZHIYUN light, and this is the M20C. We could also use this to create a color contrast because it's fully RGB, but I really like this as a kicker light or hair light, as I've already mentioned, because it's so tiny and lightweight that it's very easy to just boom it above our talent and still have it out of frame so we don't see anything. Imagine having a really big COB light that we now need to boom above our talent because we don't have any space in the background. So here, this is absolutely amazing and way easier to work with. And here you can see the immediate difference it makes because it creates a bit of a silhouette around her hairline as well as on her right shoulder and her arm, and thus separating her more from the background, making the overall look a bit more flattering. So very easy and simple. We now have 2 points for our 3-point lighting. We have our key light as well as our hair light. So what is the third point of our 3-point lighting? This could be either of two things. It could be a fill light, meaning we're going to bring in more light on the dark side of her face, or we're going to do the opposite and we're going to bring in a negative fill, meaning we're going to take away light. Let's demonstrate both. Let's start with the negative fill, because taking away light is just as useful as bringing in more light. Because maybe we have a scene where we want to increase the contrast, maybe we're filming something dramatic, more emotional, and therefore want to suggest that there is more tension, and we can bring in some dark cloth. This is being a flag, but you can just bring in any kind of black material on the opposite side, and that stops any kind of reflection that is going to bring light back onto the dark side of her face, increasing the contrast even more. So here's the before and here's the after. You can clearly see that there is a big difference in the increase of shadow on the left side of her face. So now we're going to do the opposite. What if we want to bring in more light on the dark side of her face? And this is usually being used in a commercial look or anything related to beauty. We can just bring in another light source if we want to, but the easiest way to do so is just to bring a white bounce. And again, this could be any kind of white material. We're going to use a reflector for this, or basically just a white cloth, and I will show you what difference this can make. So here's the before and here's the after. See how much light we're bringing into the shadow side of her face just by raising this. Obviously, we would put it somewhere just outside frame, but you can see the difference it makes when I just take it away and how much less contrast we now have on the shadow side of her face. And this is pretty much subjective and to your own liking. Again, if you want to film something that is very friendly, then you want to bring in more light. But if you have something dramatic, emotional, then maybe you do want to increase the shadow side. As a quick example, I want to show you what it looks like if we're not filming shadow side and we're placing our camera on the same side as our key light. So I'm going to bring in the camera on the same side that our key light is. And we're going to film her from this side. And as you can see now, we're having the same angle. The only thing that changed is the position of our camera in relation to our key light. And here, the image doesn't really look flattering. It looks kind of flat because there is no difference between her left side and the right side of her face, and everything is, well, there's no shadows. It's just, everything is just flat. So we're going to bring it back to the original place just to see the difference. And now we have more contrast, and therefore we are seeing a much richer image and we have a lot more depth overall. So just as a demonstration now, I'm going to turn off all lights and then I'm going to bring them in one by one. So this is what the scene looks like with none of our own lights whatsoever, and we're just going to use the natural light. Then as our first step, we're going to bring in our hair light. And you can see that it's just subtle, but it's going to bring in a bit of a hair light. We can also increase this if we want to increase the contrast. Then we're going to bring in our second light, and that is the key light. And this is what it looks like with our hair light as well as our key light. And it's so simple to do, and we can just control all the settings as well as the color temperature and the intensity via an app, and we can just have all of our lights in one place, and we can control all of our lights without having to actually walk up to the lights ourselves. And here's our last step. We're going to bring in a fill light. So now we have our key light, a hair light, as well as a fill, so that we just decrease the shadow on the camera right and have a little bit more of a high key commercial look. So to summarize, this was our first 3-point lighting setup. Super simple. Things to remember. Put your camera on the shadow side of your subject. Then as the next step, we're going to bring in our key light on the opposite side, around 45-degree angle. And we want to soften it up with a softbox. Then our next step is we're going to bring in our hair light just to separate our subject a bit more from the background. And as a last step, and this is up to your liking, you can either bring in more light on the shadow side of her face, or you can even take more light away and therefore have a more contrasty look. And this is it. This is a very simple 3-point lighting setup. But we're not going to stop there. And we're going to increase the size of our key light and therefore making our light even softer and more flattering and more natural looking. And how do we do this? A very simple trick. We're going to bring in a diffusion frame and put it in front of our key light, therefore just creating a bigger light source. And with this, we're going to make our light a lot softer. By bringing in this big diffusion frame, we now increase the size of our key light by a lot, and thus making our light a lot softer. But since we're now shooting through a different diffusion frame, we also pulled our light a little further back. We did lose a lot of light. Luckily for us, the Molus G300 has plenty of light in reserve, so we can just crank it up a little. And now to roughly here. This is really good looking now, and it is a lot softer than it was before. Again, for a simple YouTube setup, for a small interview testimonial talking head, it's fine to just use a softbox. But if we really want to get the most out of our 3-point lighting, we need a really nice and soft light source. And the bigger it is and the closer it is to our subject, the softer it will become. And this right here is our final image. And now I'm going to show you a before and an after we brought in our big diffusion frame. So there you have it. This was our first 3-point lighting, but I promised in the intro that we're going to show you a second 3-point lighting setup, which is even more flattering for our female subject. And this is called a butterfly or beauty lighting, where we're going to boom up our ZHIYUN G300 above our talent. And that's what we're going to do right now. And then I'm going to see you in a second when we're done. And we are back with our second setup, the butterfly lighting. I already boomed our light way above our subject, and here the Molus G300 comes in very handy as well. If you look at how high we boomed our light, this wouldn't be possible with a regular good old COB light, because a regular COB light is way longer and bigger, and we wouldn't have the headspace here to actually boom it above our subject. But with the Molus G300, we have so much headspace because this light is very tiny for its power. So here, this comes in really handy for this shoot, but also other shoots as well. The other thing that is great about the Molus G300 is that it comes with a control box that is separate to our actual COB light head, and it comes with a very long cable, so we can actually adjust everything on here, and that makes our footprint a lot smaller up there. By placing our light source way above our subject, we want to achieve a very flattering shadow structure on our talent's face. But we need to be careful, because if we move in our light too far, we're going to create something that is known as raccoon eyes. And then we're going to create some really unflattering shadows underneath our talent's eyes. So we need to be careful by not moving in our light too far and just move it to where we get the shadow underneath her nose to resemble a bit of a butterfly. And this is where this lighting technique gets its name. But we can just put our light onto ideally a tripod with wheels, and then we can just move it around for our perfect spot. And I think it's just right around here, and this looks really nice and flattering. So now we have a really flattering shadow structure and thus elevating the cheekbones of our subject, making it even more flattering. Also, since we're pointing our light source directly to the forehead of our subject, we're kind of eliminating some uneven spots as well as blemishes, and therefore making the face of our subject even more flattering. I don't know if you noticed, but all of the other lights stayed the same. We still have our kicker light in the background. We also have our fill light that we just put on top of our TV over here. The camera position didn't change either. The only thing we changed was our key light. There you have it. This was our 3-point lighting tutorial for interview setups, YouTube talking heads, testimonials, whatever you want to use for. And now, before we close off this video, let's summarize what we did. Number 1, we positioned our beautiful model Leonardo just the way that we liked it, we framed it right, and then we positioned the camera to the opposite side of our natural light source. Because we can't adjust the sunlight coming in, thus we exposed the camera for the scene that we can't change. Then the thing that we can change is how we light our subject. And the first light we brought in was the ZHIYUN-TECH G300 as our key light, and we could have just powered this way stronger. We could have actually used this outside because this light is impressively strong. We used a softbox to soften up the face of our subject, and we pointed it at around 45 degrees angle, shooting shadow side with our camera to increase depth and contrast, also placing our key light on the same side as our windows just to make it look more realistic. Then we brought in a kicker light. We brought in the ZHIYUN 5-ray M20C as our hair light to separate our subject more from the background. And as a third and final point, to our liking, we can adjust the contrast levels by either bringing in a fill light on the shadow side of our subject's face to just brighten up the dark side, or we just do the opposite and take light away by just using a black cloth, black texture, or a flag on, again, the opposite side of where our key light is to just minimize all of the reflections spilling back onto our subject's face. And there you have it. This was our 3-point lighting tutorial. And if you want to check out any of the equipment we used in this video, then I will have all the links down in the description below for our amazing key light, the ZHIYUN-TECH G300, as well as our kicker light, the 5-ray M20C. And if you liked this video and if you learned something, then please give this video a thumbs up because it really helps the channel grow. Subscribe for more video tutorials that will be up on this channel every Wednesday, and I hope to see you on the next one.